On June 23rd, you left Midway.
Right.
How did you leave Midway?
I left on the no banana boat, they said, and its name was Midway. And we towed back, I think it was 2 PT boats with us, and the destroyers that escorted us back to Pearl Harbor, they towed several of the PT boats back with them.
And you said you had some Japanese POWs with you at that time.
Yes, we had somewhere, I'd estimate, around 75 to 100 Japanese prisoners with us. And how they got to Midway, I mean, who brought them into Midway, I don't know, but we brought them back to Pearl with us. And there was one of them they said was an admiral. I don't know what his name was, but I stood guard over him one time while on the way back, and then when we got to Pearl Harbor, they took him off separately from the others.
Well, then you went back to Eva.
Went back to Eva. We reorganized. We got brand new F4, F4s. And we got new pilots and trained the pilots and all there at Elba.
And you stayed there until the fall of 1942?
Yeah, stayed there till the fall of 1942.
And where did you go?
And then we left. We went to, we left on the USS Nassau, I think is what it was. It was a baby carrier. And we went down, we were off of, we were actually headed to the canal. But
Guadalcanal.
Guadalcanal. But when we got to Espirito Santos, they needed their airplanes so bad up at the canal that they launched the planes and they flew on up to Guadalcanal, and they took us off and we went into Espirito Santos.
And how long did you stay at Espirito Santos?
We were there 2 or 3 weeks before we actually got new airplanes, and they were F4Us, and which we had never seen before.
Tell me how you learned about the F4U.
Well, the leading chief of the engineering chief of the squadron took us up and told us to start assigned each one of us certain mechanical jobs to do on the airplane of taking it apart, and we completely stripped it from one end to the other. Even pulled the landing gear off of it, pulled the prop. We took everything out, and then we put it all back together, and they took it down to one end of the field and tied it down and power checked it, and they called the pilot, sent him up with it, and everything worked okay, and they said, well,
How long did it take to strip it down and put it back together?
No, it probably took us a couple days altogether. We were...
Hell of a way to learn about an airplane.
Well, there was over 100 of us, I guess, working on it all together, everything.
Okay. How did you get to Guadalcanal?
I got, well, later on, we got the 24 of the F4Us, and of course the pilots, they went on up to Henderson Field at Guadalcanal. I went up on a troop destroyer.
And how long did you spend up there?
We stayed up there probably around 3 weeks to a month, and then they moved us up to Russell Island.
And tell me about Russell Island and the time you spent there.
Well, Russell Island was had a coral runway up there, and we had revetment areas around there, and where we kept the F4Us, and the Japanese came over Russell Island of a night to bomb Guadalcanal, and we'd have there'd be a couple Army P-38s come in every afternoon, and there was one section of the island we didn't fire any ack-acker up, and that section was where the P-38s were, and they could attack the bombers, and they shot down a lot of bombers while we were up there. And also in the daytime, while our F-4Us, they attacked the Japanese bombers when they were coming down going to Guadalcanal.
While you're up there at Russell Island, they sent you T-8 someplace, didn't they?
There at the last, they sent me to about 20 of us up to Munda, and it was right after the invasion of Munda, and they had a Cashew 7 Navy outfit that didn't have any experience at all, and they sent us up there to help them out for a week or so. I don't remember exactly how long.
And when did you leave and go back to the continental U.S.?
I came back in, I guess it's November of 43, October, somewhere in late 43.
And where were you assigned then?
I went back to El Toro, California, which is a new base that hadn't been open too long at that time.
Now, they were having some troubles with the F-4U then, weren't they?
Yes.
And you met a very famous individual then. Tell me about that.
One day we had, well, 1 week there, we had trouble with the airplanes flipping over on their back and floating down to the ground, and we killed 5 or 6 pilots there, almost right over the base. And so they had the planes grounded, and one day there was a chance Vought pilot came in and to take the plane up and to check it out, see if he could find out what was wrong with it. And
did you know who this pilot was when you first saw him?
I didn't know. He came out to fly the airplane. The airplane's number was 200. And he came out to fly it and signed the yellow sheet, and I started back into the hangar, and I found out that the name was Charles Lindbergh. And so I went in the ready room and asked if that was the Charles Lindbergh, and they said yes, it was, that he was test pilot for Chance Vought. And he took the plane up, and he almost didn't make it out of it. But he got it straightened out, and it pulled all of the rivets out and wrinkled the skin, and it was in horrible shape. We had to send it to overhaul after that. But he told the pilots how to fly it, to keep the power on it when they rolled it over on its back, and they'd have no problem with it, and they didn't after that.
You didn't stay stateside for the rest of the war, did you? You went back out to Westpac.
No, I left there and went down to a staging area in the Marshall and Gilbert Islands, and then from there went into Okinawa, and I was Major General L.E. Woods, crew chief. He was the commander of the 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing at Okinawa. And after that, the war was over in 45, and we moved on up to Japan, and then shortly after that, the general took the air wing over to Tientsin, China. And when Truman, Chiang Kai-shek was getting run out of China, and so Truman, when he pulled Marines out of China in 1947. We came back to the States and went to Cherry Point, North Carolina.
So technically, you're a Pearl Harbor survivor. You're a survivor of Guadalcanal. You're the last China Marines.
Yes, this is true.
Now, you stayed in the Corps after the war.
Yes.
And you stayed working on aircraft.
Yes, I was in the, I made probably 3 trips to Europe. I was in the Mediterranean. We'd go over on carriers. I was on the Roosevelt. I was on the Yorktown. I can't remember, Saipan maybe. I was on a bunch of carriers over there in the Mediterranean. We'd go over and stay 6 months on occupation duty in the Mediterranean, and then we would come back to Gibraltar, and they'd relieve us there. Another carrier would, and we'd come back to the States.
Okay, now, you stayed in the Marine Corps until the first time you retired was in 1962.
Yeah, the last part in 1962, and then I retired, and then in 1966, the Commandant of the Marine Corps sent me a letter and asked me to come back in the service. I didn't have to go, but he said they needed my MOS and they needed me to come back in the service. So I passed the physical. I went down to MacDill Field there in Tampa, Florida, took the physical and passed it, and I went back in, and I came out to the West Coast to Camp Pendleton, and then on over to Vietnam. I served a tour of duty at Chulai, Vietnam, 14 months over there, and then went back to Beaufort, South Carolina, and retired the second time in 1968.
Hey, Gunnery Sergeant, tell me something now.
Yes.
I want you to list all the different airplanes that you worked on for the Marine Corps, if you can remember.
How many different?
Guys, name the airplanes that you can remember.
Well, I worked. I worked on the ADs, dive bombers, and
on the Buffalo.
Of course, I worked on the Buffaloes, Wildcats. I worked a little on the SB2U3s when I was out there at Midway. Helped the guys with them some. I worked on the. In fact, I crew chiefed the old Gunnery bird some, and
Worked on the F4U?
F4U, Corsair.
Worked on the FJ1?
I worked on the SB2C at El Toro. They had a few of those there. There was dive bombers then. I don't think they ever seen too much action. We had some problem with the tails flying off of them.
So that's some problems with the intercom, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, now, you have a favorite airplane that you worked on?
I think the F4U is the finest airplane I ever worked on.
You like the Corsair?
It's tough.
Tough. Well, we're just about done. You finished it. You spent some time in Vietnam, didn't you? In July.
Yeah.
What did you do in July?
I was the NCOIC of the electronics shop there.
So you ran the avionics crews?
Avionics crew, yeah.
All the geeks.
Yeah.
Okay, now, we're just about done. I got a couple of things to finish up here. A couple of questions I'm going to ask you. Is there anything else that I forgot to ask you? Can you think of anything I forgot?
No.
Okay, now, this is the time when I give you a chance to say anything you want to say about anything you want to say. This is the time to spout off if you want.
Well, I think the main thing I'd like to say is in World War II, the United States knew what war was, and we fought the war. Nobody could stop us from winning that war. Lawyers back in the States had nothing to do with it. And today, it seems to me like that they declare war and they don't mean it. They don't go in there and fight it. They don't go in there and take it. They just don't do it. They play around with it. They're worried about killing some civilians or this and that and the other. I don't like to kill people either. But when you declare war, whoever's in the way, take like we were at Midway. Okay, probably 700 of us all total at Midway Island. Now the United States government was going to sacrifice us at Midway to get that fleet. Now this would have been bad for us, yes, but it's what they should have done because it's war. We don't fight wars anymore. We declare a lot of them, but we don't fight them.
Okay, well, this is Bob Naylor. The time is now 13:55 hours, and we'll be ending the interview. I want to thank you personally because these are a lot of fun for me. And I want to thank you on behalf of the Pacific Aviation Museum Oral History Project. Thank you very much, Gunnery.